This is Nelson Ranch. So this is the second video I wanted to make about the balance changes of Uma Musume after the second anniversary. So uh, the actually I'll do it with the characters. The recovery skills change is actually not that hard to understand. It's basically better. I think what's harder to understand is actually the acceleration changes, accelerations like these skills here. And of this, I realized that in the first video, I forgot to talk about this acceleration skill, which also got a big boost. Kishikaise, this skill was made fun of because it was pretty crap before. Now it's as good as any other acceleration skill, like Nurikai Jozu or Tsubazeri. It's basically now the counterpart to Daiichi Ruby's gold skill and Symboli Christus's gold skill. Daiichi Ruby's gold skill, if you recall, so I actually have it here. Daiichi Ruby's gold skill, if you recall, is a skill that increased acceleration in the short of the mile, and Symboli Christus's skill is a skill that increases the long. This is a skill that increases acceleration in the mid distance. And it's given by Symboli, Serious Symboli, not Symboli, Serious Symboli. or to be more, I don't know why I'm pronouncing it Symboli, but it's actually Shimbori, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So it's given by Sirius, and it basically is going to happen in the beginning of the last phase. Now, what does this mean? And I think that's where it gets kind of tricky. So here we go. To understand this, I think you need to understand that there are multiple ways to understand, to divide the race in the racetrack. Two of them are pretty self-explanatory. One is the first half versus the second half. This is obviously, it's just two halves. And then there's the uphill segments and the downhill segments, and this is also pretty self-explanatory. Whereas tricky is that the game sometimes didn't actually follow the actual terrain. And from what I understand, they've been trying to fix it over time so that the terrain, the actual terrain, is reflected in the game itself. So that's they're saying that they're doing that. So maybe there'll be even more minor changes to make that. I mean, I'm not going to comment on that too much because that's. I don't know the terrain that well because I don't really do horseback racing. I don't bet on that stuff, so I don't know. All right. So the other one that's interesting for the game mechanic is the part where they divide into three parts: the first leg, middle leg, and the final leg. And the first leg is the moment where you get out of the gate and it's 1/3 in, and then the middle leg is to where you're 1/3 in. So it's the middle 1/3, and then the final leg is the last 1/3. And the final leg is important because it's the part where you go in acceleration. So when you understand it this way, you can also understand why you have these 5 different stats. In the first leg, when you get out of the gate, you accelerate. And in this initial acceleration phase, 2 stats are important. One is power, and the other one is guts. When you have high power and high guts, you accelerate faster. But obviously, you do better if you have 2 things. One is the gate skills that actually reduce the time of lag that you have when the gate opens and when you leave, and the acceleration skills, and that will make you go faster. Then after you go reasonably fast, then there's these early first leg skills that pop up that you can click on that might proc, and then right before entering the middle leg, there's a small acceleration phase that you accelerate to. And then once you're in the middle leg, then what happens is all the characters basically cruise. They cruise at a particular speed that's more or less the same with each other, and that does not change with speed. What's important in the middle leg is actually your intelligence stat and your power stat. The higher your intelligence stat, the character is going to try and be in the position where it's supposed to be. Like if it's a runner, it's going to try to be at the front as possible. If it's a leader, it's going to be towards the front of the leader pack. And if it's a betweener, it's going to try to be in the front of the betweener pack and not too far behind from the leader. So if the last, not too behind from the runner. So if the last leader is actually way far behind the runner, then the first betweener may in fact be in front of that last leader. And the same applies for chasers. The chaser, if you have a high intelligence, the chaser will try to follow the betweener, and it will try to be not lagging too far behind the runner. And because of the game mechanic, what often ends up happening is that the betweeners and the chasers are typically mixed up. And this is actually not good. This is part of the reason why people say, oh, why be a betweener? Why don't you just choose a chaser? Because chaser is going to be in a similar slot as a betweener and get all the benefits that a betweener has, like the sixth place skill of Major Orion, which is, I imagine, was designed for betweeners because it's supposed to happen when you're in sixth place. It's not supposed to happen when you're in seventh, eighth, or ninth, which is the places that's reserved more for chasers. Anyway, so if you have a high intelligence, you try to put yourself in that right position, but you need power, because if you don't have a high enough power, then you can't actually place yourself in that position. The other characters will block you in there. So you need a high enough power to surpass the other characters through your acceleration, and your high intelligence hopefully will basically make you to put in there. So if you have high power but low intelligence, then you will be able to pass other characters, but you're not necessarily taking advantage of the game mechanic in terms of being in the right spot. But if you have high intelligence but not enough power, then the reverse happens, right? You want to do it, but you can't do it because you don't have the physical ability to do so. And then when you enter the final leg, then speed becomes critically important, because what happens is, well, actually, and also stamina. When you enter the final leg, what happens is the character calculates how much health points it has from the stamina it has. So at the very beginning of the game, depending on the amount of stamina, you'll have a certain amount of health point. And then as the race progresses, you begin to use those health points. You use some health points each time you accelerate, or each time an acceleration skill or a speed skill kicks in. Each time you try to pass somebody, you use more health points as well. And when you hit that last final leg, the last 1/3, if you have enough health points to run at the maximum speed to 60 meters before the goal line, then you accelerate as fast as you can. If you actually don't have the health points necessary, so if you don't have the stamina necessary, what's going to happen is you're going to keep running at that cruising speed until the character decides, okay, now the distance is short enough that I can run at maximum speed, and then it will start to accelerate. So the acceleration is going to be later than the other characters. But this is the reason why everybody tries to stack up on enough stamina, but not too much, because if you have enough stamina, then you can accelerate at the fastest moment that anybody can accelerate. Um, Now, certain these skills along the way basically will take away your health points. So most obviously are the various debuffs. The various debuffs basically take away all those health points, and if you don't have enough health points, you can't accelerate fast, and you get screwed. Or even if you do accelerate at the earliest moment, you still lose through debuffs health points, and then you won't be able to make it to the finish line, and so you start walking, and then you get past. You run out of energy, basically. Um, Other times, certain skills might actually, like, Twin Turbo has that skill that basically takes away, I think, 4% of your health points. So this is part of the reason why Twin Turbo is going to have a tough time, running to the goal line. You have to actually, like, pad up your stamina extra. But if you actually know the mechanic, then you'll do that. You'll pad up stamina extra, and then you should be able to run it. But you'll have these skills that uses health points along the way. Similarly, Chris Sess, for example's acceleration skill will use health points 2% at the moment of acceleration, so that you might accelerate, but you know, like 100 meters before the goal line, you might run out of health points and you might start walking. So, you want to actually pad your uh, health points extra. I mean, there are also skills that allow you to recover health points in the final leg too. So Furishibori, for example, is a famous skill where if you have 3 skills that pop off in the final leg, you get a 1.5% boost to health. Uh, I suppose in theory, this is where Kajima no Bakajikara would be useful, because Kajima no Bakajikara, if that pops, I think you get a 5.5% bonus to your health. And so, any loss that you have from somebody Christus's thing would be topped off. And not only that, you'll run, you'll get a slightly faster, you'll get a, speed up component attached to it finally now. So, I mean, it's possible that you might want to, I don't know if you really want to, but you could use it in theory there. So there you go. I mean, So this is the reason why these phases are important. Now, uh, because this is a game, the three parts of the game actually has subdivisions inside them, and that's what makes it weird, right? So, for example, the first leg. The first leg actually has four major periods. The very first period is the starting phase, the moment that the gate opens. And the skill that's important here are skills like concentration or jigatame or any of the green skills. All the green skills go off immediately at the starting phase. Um, and then there's the first 5 seconds that happens afterwards. This used to be a pretty terrible period because many skills would often go off in this first 5 seconds, and then they will immediately be canceled or nullified. It won't count. This happened to a lot of skills before the first and second anniversaries, where they actually fixed many of those problems. But a lot of skills, this kind of thing happened. Like it would go off, within the first 5 seconds after the gate opens, and then it will be nullified, and then it will never proc in the rest of the game. And it's like, what happened to that skill? And you realize, oh, what may have happened is that it may have happened in that first 5 seconds. So they've actually they've been trying to address that issue, and that no longer happens. Anyway, so after that 5 seconds have passed, then you get that regular period till you get to the middle leg, and that's the normal third period, and then the final period is the period that's right before entering the middle leg. And in this final period, right before entering the middle period, it's important because there's a slight boost to acceleration that's necessary to get to that cruising speed. So that happens. Another thing that could happen is this is the moment where uh, certain recovery skills kick in, like yoyu shakushaku or the betweener skill. Senpuku Taisei, right? So that last 5 seconds, the last period right before entering the middle leg is important. The middle leg is also divided, but I'm not really going to bother talking about it too much. The really important part is that it's the period right before entering the final leg, because if you have skills that go off there, then that will translate to, helping you out in the final leg when you need to accelerate. All right, so now we get to the final leg, right? And the most important thing about the final leg thing is the fact that it's divided, at least initially, it was divided into two periods. In the very first incarnation of Uma Musume, it was divided into two periods. And what happened is that in the first period of the final leg, you had the acceleration phase. And in the second period of the final leg, you had the speed phase. So acceleration skills typically would happen during the first half of the final leg, and speed skills will happen in the second half of the final leg. Now, the problem was if the acceleration happens at the tail end of the first half of the final leg, then it happens way too late. And the acceleration skill is totally useless. And if a speed skill kicks off at the tail end of the second section, then again, it's too late, because what's the point of having a skill like, Zenshin Zende, all body, all soul, go off right before the finish line? It's totally pointless. Um, so they addressed that issue probably, uh, sometime before the second anniversary. And the first skill to be fixed with that is Sweep Tosho's gold skill, the intelligence Sweep Tosho's gold acceleration skill, 抜群の切れ味. And what that said had this word in it. レース終盤初めの方で. And what this probably means, and this is my conjecture, and I think I'm right on this. What this means is that in the first section, it's only in the first half that this acceleration skill will go off. So, even if it happens at the tail end of this window, it's still going to be somewhat effective. And in the first half, second half, that skill will not go off. Now, certain other acceleration skills, it will still go off there, like sprint turbo, for example, for short distance, will still go off there. But short distance is so short that it's actually fine. And in the second section, it's only in the first half that skills like Zenshin Zende would now take off. And I don't see a single normal skill that happens in the second half of the second half of the final leg, the last 1/4. The only skill that I know in which that happens would probably be things like Oguri Cap's unique skill and various other characters' unique skills, which says specifically that it goes off in the last 200 meters. So if you run a race like Kikkasho, which is 3,000 meters long, the final leg is the last 1,000 meters. The 1,000 meters divided between the first 500 meters and the last 500 meters. The normal speed skills like Zenshin Zende will happen in the third quarter of that last leg. And so it'll happen from the 500 meter to the 750 meter mark. But Oguri Cap skill will not happen until you hit the 800 meter mark, so that you have only the next 200 meters to go. And then in that 800 meter mark, if it goes off, it's going to go off at that 800 meter mark. Oguri Cap skill, because it's a unique skill, is so powerful, it's actually going to go beyond the finish line. The effect is going to last beyond the finish line, and it's going to, that part is going to be gone to waste. But it's okay because it's basically a clutch skill. That's what it was designed to be, and it works. Hell, it works really well in the short distance. It works really well in the mile. It works quite well in the medium, and it works fine in long distance. So it's okay. But yeah, I mean that's the only types of skill that work that way. I think when you inherit it, you don't actually have that problem. So you could have a really powerful move where in the Kikkasho, Zenshin Zende takes off, and you go fast in the last 200 meters. You go much faster, and then Oguri Cap skill kicks off, and at the 800 meter mark, so from the 500 to 750 meter mark, you go fast with Zenshin Zende, and then from the 800 meter mark, you go fast with Oguri Cap's borrowed skill, and because it's a borrowed skill, its effectiveness, I think, goes just to the edge, and it won't really overshoot it. So it's perfectly fine when you inherit it. So once you understand this, then you can sort of guess where these skills happen, right? And then once you can guess where these skills happen, how effective are they is the question you can address. So now finally, now we get to the point where I want to do. How effective are the new skills that have been introduced with this new mechanic where it only happens in the first quarter of the final leg? Oh, here's my answer. It's effective for the short mile. It's probably effective for the mid distance, and it may not be that effective in the long distance. So the Kikkasho is 3,000 meters. I use this because it's a great example. The final leg is the last 1,000 meters, right? So then the first section of the final leg is the first 500 meters, and the last section of the final leg is the last 500 meters. And in the acceleration phase, it starts at the 2,000 meter point, and if it happens at the beginning, you're golden. Hey, nobody actually complains about this when it happens in the beginning. That's what's supposed to happen. Similarly, Chris' skill is going to happen at the beginning. Chaser's skill, the imminent shadow, or creeping shadow, is going to happen right at the beginning. Everybody loves these skills. They're perfect skills for this, right? But remember, leaders don't have a skill like this. The only leader that I have that has a skill like this, I think, is Narita Bryan. Narita, the new Blaze Bryan, is the only character that has that skill, where you take off immediately at the start of the final leg. This is the reason why Blaze Bryan is going to be very strong in the long distance. The skill where this happens for runners is Kitasan Black, the original Kitasan Black's unique skill. So you inherit that, and your acceleration phase starts right there. And then just a little bit forward, you can then use what's her name? Seiwen Sky's unique skill, and you have double whammy of these unique skills, and then boom, you go, you fly forward. So these are the acceleration skills that happen right at the money. How about these skills, like that says in the beginning of the race? Well, let's not do the math. So let's assume that you get the worst luck possible, and this skill happens at the tail end of the first quarter of the last leg. Well, what that means is it's going to actually start to proc at the 2,250 meter mark, right? I mean, the math is simple. 3,000 meters divided by 3 is 1,000, and so 1,000 divided by 4 is 250. That's why it's the 2,250 meter mark where that skill is going to proc. It's going to happen at that quarter. So if it procs at the 2,250 meter mark, it's 250 meters late. And if it's 250 meters late, too bad, it's too late. Why is it too late? It's too late because if you have a character that I'm going to use the old numbers here, but if you have a character that's going at the speed of 1,200 speed, and it has a power of 1,200 power, this is the maximum power and maximum speed in the past, then It takes anywhere about 200 to 250 meters to accelerate fully. All right. It takes 200 to 250 meters to accelerate fully at speed 1200 and speed power 1200 power 1200, which means if it procs at that 2250 meter point, it's still too late. Right? So at the long distance, these may not be that good, and that might be the reason why we have skills like, they introduced a skill for betweeners called Symboli Christus skill. I don't know why they didn't introduce it for leaders yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if one day they actually release it for leaders too, right? And they might release something like this for runners, but I think runners already, can just do it by inheriting skills, so they probably won't do it for runners. It might just be totally it just might be totally random, like Ninoya is. Okay. So when you realize this, then you realize that for the short and the mile, this skill is going to be effective, right? This mechanic works perfectly fine, because the longest mile we had is 1600. And if you think about the 1600, right, then the final leg starts at the 1067 meter mark, because the 1/3 of 1600 is 533 meters. And the last 533 meters divided into 267. And so the first section lasts for half of this. Well, the first section lasts for the 1067 to 1334. And if the acceleration happens in the first half of this first section, it's going to start from 1067 to the 1200 meter mark. So at the very last moment that these kinds of skills like sweep Tosho gold could proc would be the 1200 meter mark. And if it procs at the 1200 meter mark, it's 133 meters in. And so if you have a character that's got speed 1200 and power 1200, you still haven't fully accelerated yet. And if your speed was like 1600, then you're actually speed 1400 and power 1200. And so you still haven't fully accelerated. You have not fully accelerated for sure. So this kind of skill that Sweep Tosho had will still be effective. It won't be as effective if it had happened in the beginning, but it'll still be useful. And if it's short distance, it's even going to be even more useful. So that's why for short distance, these skills are great. And even for the mile, it's okay, right? And the odds of it happening at the very, very, very last moment means you were really unlucky. You don't want to be that unlucky in the first place. All right. So now let me talk about the probably thing, right? It's probably effective for the mid distance. Why am I saying probably? Here's why. This upcoming mid-distance race is the 2000 meter, and this is the shortest one. If you have the 2400, which is the longest mid-distance, this becomes less effective. Right? The longer it is, the less effective this type of skill is going to be because of the mechanic. But if it's 2000 meters, then if you divide the 2000 meters by 3, you get 667. So that's the last leg. And so the final leg starts at the 1333 meter mark. And if the acceleration skill goes off at the latest moment, it's going off 167 meters, right? Because you're dividing it by 4, right? It's the first quarter. At the last moment it could happen is 167 meters. 167 meters, I mean, you're really just catching the tail end of the acceleration. I mean, so it can be effective, but it's like, it's not good. I just can't say with a straight face that this is going to be a good skill to have if it happens at the very last moment. But, as I said, for the mile, do you really want to be totally, truly unlucky? No, you don't want to do that. You want to be, reasonably lucky. So if it happens anywhere towards the start of the thing, where, or if it happens in the midpoint, right? 831, if it happens 800 and, if it happens 83 meters in, then because the acceleration lasts for 200 meters to 250 meters, depending on how powerful your speed is, if the acceleration is happening 80 meters in, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not great, but you can deal with it. It's like it's getting close to this situation over here. on top of that, what we have to remember is that in the new in the second anniversary and after, if you have over power 1200, it has this gimmick that actually increases your acceleration a little bit. Now, I don't think it's actually a lot. I've seen a lot of people talk about this and you know test this out, uh, and it doesn't seem to be that much. Uh, it's probably at best a white skill, if at that. So it's probably around like 1,000 acceleration. So if you're already getting some acceleration on top of what you've got, and then you get added to this, it becomes, less effective, but it's better than not having. So this is why I think, this skill is going to be kind of iffy for the mid distance. I'm still going to use it. To be perfectly honest, I will still use it because I'm just going to bank that I'm lucky. In the previous championship meeting, I used Subtosho's the gold acceleration skill, and that one procced pretty much at the earliest moment that I could see, and it helped Haru Urara. And then after she was accelerating, then later Nonstop Girl procced. So for the mid distance, I think personally, I think the better acceleration skill would be Nonstop Girl, because with the way Nonstop Girl works, if you're, if someone is semi-blocking you at the very tail end of the mid leg, then as soon as you enter the final leg, you will start to accelerate. And not only that, you'll accelerate for 3 seconds. So Nonstop Girl is probably the best acceleration skill you want. And then this skill, Kishikaise, or if you're a betweener, Norikai Jozu, or if you are a chaser, then Sweep Tosho's Gold. These skills will be your backup acceleration skill. I think that's the best way to think about it. You're banking on Nonstop Girl going off first, and then you're hoping that these skills go off next. Obviously, if it flips around and if this skill happens at the earliest moment and then Nonstop Girl happens, that's okay too. I'll take that. But if you have two, you probably want at minimum 2 gold skills to go off. And if you have, if you are a betweener or a chaser, and you pile on both Mejiro Dober and Mejiro Ryan's acceleration skills, they will give you 2,000 each at the moment that you hit the final leg. And so if they give you 2,000 each, then that's 4,000. And if you have if you have over power 1,200, that's actually power 5,000. So even if you don't have Nonstop Girl, if you just have its lower white version, that gives you 2,000. And so that's actually 4,000 at minimum. Even if you don't have the power, I'm going to drop the power for now. You have 4,000 plus 2,000 from the white version of Nonstop Girl. And if you have the white version of Kishikaise, you have 2,000 of this. So, you know, if you can't get the gold, get the white version. That would be my recommendation for this. But once again, just like with Uma Musume 1, we're back to a game where everything is dependent on the random number generator. The RNG god is basically watching over us. That's what this game is all about. So there you go. I suppose the good news is that the more iterations of Uma Musume we get, it's less random. It's still fundamentally random. I'm not going to make any bones about that, but it's less random. So it's better there. And so, yeah, now that you actually know the game mechanic, you actually do the numbers for the longest mid distance, which is the 2,400. So you just figure that out. 2,400 divided by 3 is 800 meters. That's the last leg. And you divide the 800 by 4, that's 200. So the latest moment in which these skills are going to proc is the 200-meter mark. And at the 200-meter mark, your acceleration is pretty much done. So this skill would be total waste. And this is why, it can be not effective for the mid distance. And, for the long distance, this really is like a tough call. So for the long distance, what you want to do is you don't want to use these skills. I think it's better to just bank on Nonstop Girl and your respective acceleration skills. If you're a chaser, you're looking at imminent shadow / creeping shadow, I don't know what you call it, but Samato Kage. And if you are a betweener, you're looking at Symbol Christus as a gold skill, and you want to add nonstop girl to that, and then you know, what's her name, Sleep Tosho skill, or switch up Norikai Jozu for betweeners would really be a backup. I mean, it happens at the beginning, then you're golden, but just don't know if that's going to be the case. All right, so yeah, there you go. I hope that's been. I hope that clarifies things. I haven't actually been like doing a lot of games. I've been actually like reading up a lot about why I'm doing this. Like nobody's gonna watch these videos. I mean, okay, maybe not nobody, but very few people are gonna watch these videos and it's not gonna make a heck of a difference. But my 2 cents. I have said my spiel. I'll see you guys around. Please enjoy the game. I'm enjoying the game. I'm actually enjoying the new Grandmasters, I have to say. All right. Take it easy. Bye bye.